Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. Welcome to my ranking of Doctor Who Season 3. Now, Season 3 is a very changeable season. This season changes so much during the run, from start to finish. From the start of Galaxy 4 to the end of the War Machines, it feels very different. I know Season 2 felt like a bit different at the end of the Time Meddler compared to the start of Planet of Giants, but this one feels even more different. I suppose the fact is because there were so many companion changes. Season 2 also had a bit of companion changes, and you don't end with the same ones. But at least you get Ian and Barbara for quite a lot of that season without having to change out either one of them or Vicky throughout most of that season. Between the rescue and the chase, it is basically a full-on team. Whilst with Season 3, you get companions leaving left, right and centre in the first half of the season. Only sticking with Dodo for the second half until Stephen goes, and then Dodo goes at the very end, and then you start the tradition of some companions leaving the penultimate story, and some companions joining in the final story that we'll see at the end of Season 4 and Season 5 as well. Only will it not do that with Season 6, because the last story is everybody's last story. So yeah, it feels a bit different. Season 2 didn't quite do that because Stephen was introduced in the penultimate story as well, so I guess technically he didn't become a companion until the final one, but he was still introduced in the penultimate, so it really starts around here for 3 seasons. So now I'll be ranking the most changeable and also the most missing of the William Hartnell era's seasons. And the episodes we'll be looking at are Galaxy 4, Mission to the Unknown, The Myth Makers, The Daleks Master Plan, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, The Ark, The Celestial Toymaker, The Gunfighters, The Savages, and The War Machines. And also, honourable mention, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. Because the other Dalek film was an honourable mention for Season 2, and Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD came just after Season 3 ended. Dalek Mania is going to become an honourable mention on the Season 4 set, as I'll be watching that between 10th Planet and Power of the Daleks alongside Adventure in Space and Time, which will also be an honourable mention there. So anyway, on to the actual rankings. So, number 10. Now, number 10 is just... There's just not much that actually appeals to me as a viewer besides the Daleks. This is Mission to the Unknown. Yeah, just if it was longer, or if the Doctor or companions were in it, it would have been knocked up the list a little bit. But as it stands, it's just a little piece of just filler / build up for Daleks Master Plan. Also, if it was put after the Myth Makers or as an actual episode of Master Plan, it probably would have been better. It feels more like an episode of Master Plan than Feast of Stephen, but that had the Doctor, Stephen and Sarah in, although no Daleks, so they kind of get 12 episodes each. But just doesn't quite feel as Doctor Who-y without at least the Doctor. I know there's Daleks, and it was supposed to be a pilot, or, well, not a pilot, actually, a pilot episode got written, but basically an example of what the planned Dalek TV spin-off was going to be, but sadly it just doesn't work as an episode of Doctor Who. It would work as an episode of the Daleks, but not as Doctor Who, so yeah, I think the Dalek pilot should have just been made as its own kind of thing. It's a bit like if K9 and Company if we did have a Girl's Best Friend, instead an episode of Season 18 was dedicated to Sarah Jane and K9 going around doing stuff, although that probably would be a lot better than this, and maybe some of the stuff in Season 18, it still wouldn't feel like Doctor Who. It wouldn't be on the lower end of the list, but it'd still not be terribly high. It still feel a bit different. And that being said, this is this low on the list, not just because of those reasons, because it's also not that interesting. You can see, if this was part of Master Plan, then it probably would be more interesting, but as it's just leading up to it, it's just there, really. Maybe if we got a bit more knowledge of the actual Daleks themselves, with the Daleks' thought process on having all of these representatives joining them, maybe we'd understand. Maybe we even get a hint of what they were planning for the 12-part epic. But as it is, it's just here. It's just something. So that's why I put it this low on the list. Number 9. Number 9 is just the weakest in terms of a story for overall of this season. Mission to the Unknown possibly the exception. But this one I don't quite think hits the mark as many of the others. This is the Gunfighters. Starting to announce small these like a train station or train coach. I like doing those, but not usually for these rankings or reviews. Anyway, so the Gunfighters isn't that enjoyable. It's not very good. It's just not that fun. It's a bit dull in some places. It's not that enjoyable. The acting's good, but the villains are forgettable, and the story is dull. And even trying to use all the Western cliches, it doesn't quite hit the mark in places. I think A Town Called Mercy hits it better with less of them, and actually focused more on its story rather than the cliches and tropes. Say what you like about that story, and to be honest, it's not an amazing story, but I think it manages to handle the Western element better than this story. And also, that fucking song is overused to hell and to death. Jesus. At least Linda Barron got better things to do when she appeared in Enlightenment and Closing Time. But here, just fucking song. Number 8. This one was actually slightly higher than before, but after rewatching it, I was bored for most of this one. More so than the Gunfighters, maybe. I just think the Gunfighters has weaker elements and weaker story ideas and weaker plot. But this one is dull. Dull and not that interesting besides some very good ideas to start with, but then just gets dull. It is The Savages. Yeah, some very good, interesting ideas to start with, and we do see some more of that throughout the episode. But after the Doctor decides to take a stand against the the Better Off, it then becomes a bit more of a typical cliched Hartnell era story, the classic era, maybe even plain Doctor Who era, where the main character is being hunted down by the baddies, and they have to help out the goodies. Yay! And some of the goodies are very eager to fight back, but not so eager to potentially see the good in some people, or try and get them to find redemption. Yeah, it becomes very typical. It's like, I was mentioning this in my Series 11, not Season 11, that's coming up later, but Series 11, ranking about how the Morax in the Witchfinders are basically typical Doctor Who aliens, mainly from the new series, with dodgy CGI looks and deep voices and being very warlike creatures, and how that story kind of turned into a very different story as than it had started as at that point. Well, it's a similar situation with here, except it just turns into a typical story where the baddies are onto them and they have to fight back. Ooh, same stuff we've seen before, and the baddies are not that interesting, and they're not that nice. It's kind of that although it I'll give it this over the Witchfinders, it does retain some of the more interesting ideas alongside of it, whilst the Witchfinders kind of dropped most of them at the point where it changed. But this can't be forgiven for its dullness. It's just so dull. I think it would have worked better as a 3-part story rather than 4. I think if it was 3 parts, it probably wouldn't be as dull, and it would have moved the pace along, and it would have sorted everything out quicker. But it's just dull, and we could have had could have taken away some of these moments of blandness to give us a bit more expansion of the world, particularly of the villains' civilization in part 1. We could have had a bit more expansion of that, as opposed to just clean corridors. So, yeah, I know budget restraints, but story imagination, you can at least try to come up with something, even if you have to put if it's just dialogue, gives us some backstory. As it is, the Savages just doesn't work very well. I'll give it, it's better than the Gunfighters on the ideas, that's why it's above that, and has stuff going for it, unlike parts of Missions of the Unknown. But it's just dull, it's just boring for most of it, especially the second half, which is supposed to be when the story gets better, but no, it actually gets worse. So, yeah. The Savages. Not that good. Number 7. Now, before doing these rewatches and this ranking, this one was actually last on the list. But it has dropped down to here after the rewatches of the other stories. And it's not nearly as boring as the Savages. The story's better than the Gunfighters, and there's more going for it than Missions of the Unknown. But it's not as good as the other stories. It is the Ark. Yes, surprisingly, this one was better on a rewatch. Although, it is still one of the weakest stories of the season, hence why it's number 7 out of 10. Like, I just gave the reasons why I thought it was better than the previous 3 I've ranked, and it's just not that great, not as great as the other stories that are coming up on this ranking, but it's still a okay story. It's fine, it's just air, it's just air, it's not much, just alright. Don't have much to say about it, it's okay. Number 6. Number 6. This time we're actually getting to some more good stories. However, we are still in a not so great area. I mean, they're okay, but pretty great. Well, not. I mean, they're pretty good, but they're not great. Number 6 is The Mythmakers. A good, but not amazing historical, with a weak exit for beloved companion Vicky. I'll say this for the Savages. Stephen's exit was actually pretty good. But this one, Vicky's exit here, is just a carbon copy of Susan's, and just doesn't really work that much. I think it would have been better if Vicky had taken Katarina's place and carried on up to Daleks Master Plan Part 4, and had an emotional death scene where she would try and get the switch, and then she'd say to the Doctor and Stephen, "Stop the Daleks for me," and then she presses the button, and then she and that bastard get sucked into space. So that would have been a fantastic way to end Vicky, and it would have been such an emotional one as well, but instead we got this, and Katarina went through that space hole, and she didn't get a very emotional death, apart from a few seconds of the characters being like all sad about it. I felt more sad over Sarah and even Brett than Katarina. At least Brett was important to the plot, and I got to know Sarah a bit better. But anyway, so yes, Mythmakers was pretty good. I don't think it's amazing, but I do think it's good, and it's okay. And it's good to watch one whilst having a beer. Yeah, I watched it whilst having a beer. My parents were going out for some drink. Well, Dad anyway, Mum was driving. She doesn't drink have any drinks when she drives. But yeah, they were going out to have some drinks and at a scout meeting or something, and I was allowed to have one beer/lager. I think it was one of the ones we had from Dad's party back in November, his birthday party. He was 60. Well, he still is at time of recording, but had one of those, and I had it whilst watching this story, and yeah, it's a good one to watch whilst having a beer/lager. So, anyway. So, next up is number 5. Number 5, this story was higher in my approval. I liked this one more on a condensed reconstruction, which is more than I could show for the bloody one from Marco Polo. But the 2 washings of the full versions have taken it down a bit and then a bit further. Sadly, it's at this point. However, on the ranking, it actually makes it look like it's still in my favour, at least compared to the other half of the season that we've already talked about. And this is Galaxy 4. So despite going down a bit lower than it originally started at, the Galaxy 4 still, at least if I was to choose the better half of the season, it's still in my favour, at least. Just a little bit better than the Mythmakers. I think the character interactions are really good, and, well, at least between the main characters and with the reals, not so much with the Dravens. And some really fun, enjoyable moments in it, but it's also a bit slow in some places, and it takes its time to actually get to the point, and I think the Dravens are a bit too single-noted, at least the clone ones anyway. They sound like robots, but they're supposed to be clones, apparently. Margaret's the only one you can actually get a decent conversation with, and she's normal. Well, quote-unquote normal. The reals are good ideas, though. It looks like giant fish monsters. But I like how they're the good guys and not the beautiful creatures. Although they've pretty much shown signs of villainy pretty early on. Anyway, so... but it's alright. It's an okay story. It's good to start the season off. But it's not really one that I would rush back to. Not anymore, anyway. I would like to see the entire story get a proper full-on reconstruction or reanimation and its own DVD release in the future. If that's okay with you, please, BBC. And also, can you fix up the Underwater Menace and animate or find The Web of Fear Part 3 and give those two stories a special edition release? Thank you. Love you. Number 4. This one was a surprise rewatch. This one, on the original watch, I thought it was not so great. But on the rewatch, I really liked it. I mean, I didn't love it, but I really liked it and enjoyed it. It was good. It was good fun for parts of it, and actually had a great story, and yeah, it does historicals well, unlike the fucking Gunfighters. I'll say Mythmakers did it pretty good as well. But maybe a bit more casually. Are these the only historicals? Yeah. And this one is The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, aka The Massacre. Yeah, I don't know, it was just better this time around. My opinion could change on another viewing, same for all of them, to be honest. But at this point in time, The Massacre is great. It's not perfect, it's not amazing, but it's still pretty great. It's still very good. It's a pretty good story. And I like how Stephen becomes the main character quite a bit. This is how to do a classic era Dr. Light story. Well, most of the story is Dr. Light, how the companion takes over for a bit. So this is a good example of that. So, yeah, better than Mission to the Unknown at doing it anyway. And we get to see some of Stephen's character development and also his more emotional side. How he's just basically going around and sorting all of this out himself with his new friends. And the Doctor is... well, William Hartnell does a great job as the Abbot. And then he does his good jobs as the Doctor as well. And my only real complaint is that whilst the last 10 minutes, I am glad we kind of gotten away from that. The horrible massacre at the end is unsuitable for young children. It does take 10 minutes for them to wrap up the story, introduce Dodo, and then get away. I'm sure all of that could have been sorted in half the time. But the amount of time they are spent talking to Dodo, it just takes it long. And apparently her accent changes for the next story because the BBC wanted all people to speak BBC English, or just, which is basically normal English, to have a normal accent as opposed to have a common London one that Dodo had at the end of the episode. And so her accent changes a little bit in the arc, and then a bit more for the end of that story, and from the Celestial Toymaker onwards, she sounds a bit more normal. And I don't know if that's Jackie Lane's actual voice, or if this one from the Massacre was, but I'm thinking it's the end of the arc / start of Celestial Toymaker onwards version. The arc's kind of got kind of a bridge, a kind of bridge between the two versions, as it's she's still got that Massacre accent at the start, but it's going away a little bit until the end, where we're going into the Celestial Toymaker. Then that's where we get her voice for the rest of the story season. So just saying that. But the Massacre is still a great story. I really like this one. One of the better historical stories from the Hartnell era, alongside the Aztecs and Marco Polo. So yeah, and maybe the Crusade on a push. Number 3. Number 3. We're into the great ones now. The great 3. And number 3 is, this one was actually higher. This was number 2. But after rewatching what is now my number 2 spot, which was third, this one's been knocked down. So, number 3 is the Celestial Toymaker. The Celestial Toymaker is fun, imaginative, and entertaining. Yeah, it takes its time, but it also spends that time wisely and imaginatively and fun. That's what it is. It's fun. Okay, the last episode does take its time to just wrap up, but it's still a really good story and really entertaining and just really just fun. So people complaining about it, whether it's them not liking the last episode or just the story non-stop, or if they think the last episode is the only necessary one, maybe also the first, and that the middle isn't that needed. Guys, just watch the entire thing. It's just fun. It's good, it's fun, it's entertaining. And if you've got a version without the N-word being used, then you'll probably like it even more. Although that was used in a nursery rhyme context, so you probably won't hate it as much as if it was used like a direct reference. Let's not talk about that anymore. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2, I've just reviewed before doing this ranking, and I mentioned that it previously been a little bit low on the list, but now had shot up a bit higher. And now, well, it used to be third, but now it's second. It is, of course, the War Machines. Holy shit, this is such a good story. This is so fun. This is so entertaining. It's just really, really fun. And yeah, such a fantastic way to end this season. The Time Meddler was a good way to end the last season. Reign of Terror was not a good way to end season 1, as I put that last on my ranking. The Time Meddler out of 8th out of 8th. The Time Meddler came 4th out of 9. This comes 2nd out of 10. This is just amazing. And I think season finales are only going to get, well, I don't think they're going to get better, but they're definitely going to stay very good for the next couple of seasons, at least. For a good while. I think at least up until the Daemons, we're going to have good season finales. At worst. Worst, and at best, we're going to have outstanding the Daemons itself. But yeah, this is a brilliant story, and it's just so much fun. So yeah, it's just great. I just love this. I've just reviewed it, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. So just go check out the review again. And so now we bring ourselves to number 1. Oh, number 1 is just something completely different. Number 1 is special. Number 1 is epic. Number 1 is long, but it doesn't feel too long, so long as you split the viewings up. And it just feels so fucking good. Number 1 is The Daleks Master Plan. Fuck, this is one of the best stories ever made. At least this side of Tomb of the Cybermen. Where to begin? Fantastic acting, apart from maybe from Adriana Hill, but yeah, fantastic characters apart from Katarina. Every episode is important, great, or feels necessary to the plot, apart from episode 7. But hey, you need a little bit of a break, even if it wasn't that very good of a break. And I'd even think if Mission to the Unknown was part of this story as opposed to its own individual prologue one, then that would count over here, and it would not be number 10 of the list. In fact, it wouldn't be on the list, it'd be part of this episode. It would be on the list, it would just be part of this, not as its own individual thing. And the Gunfighters would be 9 out of 9. So that'd be last, even though it's still in the same place. But yeah, episode 1 is just a great way to start. Episode 2 carries it on. It's great. 3, it's a bit of a break, but it still moves some stuff on well. 4, a dramatic turn with the death of a companion, and then later on the death of a main supporting character, and the introduction of a new main companion who is kind of a supporting character at the moment, though. 5 is where the tables turn for that supporting character. 6 is where we definitely get to see more of the character interactions, and so much great stuff with the villains. 7 is our little break for Christmas. 8 is a bit of fun, going back to the story, but also having a bit more fun for New Year's Day. 9 gets back to it a bit more seriously. 10, 9 and 10, I suppose, in a way, are pseudo-historicals, with 10 a bit more, and we get to see the monk again. And 10 is where everything changes with the standoff. Well, not the standoff, the handover. 11 goes back to finish the job, and 12 finishes in the story in a dramatic sense. 11 is also a bit of a rescue mission, and then 12 is just the final epic story, and it's also probably the earliest devastating and disturbing story of the show. At least if I was, like I said, if I was rating the episodes age rating wise, Master Plan Part 2, 12, Part 12 would get a 12 age rating from me, personally. And Massacre Part 4 would be the next one, and then a couple from Fury to Deep, and then the next one would be the TV movie. If I was at the BBC. This is including special features on the DVDs and Blu-rays of other seasons, as you will have no doubt noticed. But yeah, this is just a fantastic story. I loved it, especially the last 2. So much good tension, so much good characters. The only downside is the Feast of Stephen, the entire episode, and also Katerina in the first 4. And like I said, I would have rather it was Vicky in those first 4 episodes, and she died at the end of Part 4 in a way I demonstrated when I was talking about the Mythmakers. But as it stands, the story is still fucking epic. Despite some issues, and the same with the War Machines, they are still near perfect. They are fantastic. And in this one's case, this is the best, not just of Season 3, but the best of the William Hartnell era. Oh, I fucking love this story. And it's so far the best Dalek story, and I don't of the classic series, and I don't think that's going to change at least until 1973, if not until 1988. 23 fucking years later, 22, 23. We'll see. I mean, I love Planet of the Daleks. We'll see how Evil's a great one. Power's a good one. I like Revelation and Resurrection. Not so much on the other ones. Apart from maybe the second half of Genesis, when it gets really, really good, as opposed to pretty good. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Genesis of the Daleks, I'll let you know now. First half I think is pretty good. Second half I think is certainly with the last 2 episodes, is the classic everyone perceives it to be, but the rest of it not so much. But certainly Remembrance of the Daleks is my all-time favourite classic, so, and second overall after Day of the Doctor, so if it's not Planet of the Daleks that's the new best Dalek story, then it will be Remembrance of the Daleks. So, yeah. But then again, this is a 12-part epic, so, or 13 if you include Mission to the Unknown, or 11 if you not include that, if it's all but Feast of Stephen. But still, just fantastic. Apart from Feast of Stephen. So, that's it from my ranking of Season 3 stories. I'll just reread the list to remind you. Number 10 is Mission to the Unknown. Number 9 is the Gunfighters. Number 8 is the Savages. Number 6 is the Ark. Number 5 is the Mythmakers. Number 4 is Galaxy 4. Number 3 is the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, aka the Massacre. Number 3 is the Celestial Toymaker. Number 2 is the War Machines. And number 1 is the Daleks Master Plan, an honourable mention, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. So, thank you for watching this Season 3 ranking, and I shall see you in my next video will be Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD review. Then we'll have a mini Dalek movies ranking, and then we'll start Season 4 with The Savages. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. So yeah, season 3. Let's just check it out. Excuse me. Sorry, I missed one. And also, honourable mention, Doctor Who, and stuff. And maybe she'd say to the Doctor and Stephen, stop the Daleks for me, please. Can you... No, hang on. I felt more sad over Sarah's than... Or Brett's, rather. Even Brett's, actually. Number 7 is the Ark. Excuse me. Number 8 is the Savages. Number 8 is the Savages, aka the Massacre. aka the Massacre. Number 2 is the Celestial Toymaker. Sorry, that's wrong. Number 3 is the Celestial Toymaker. Number 3 is the Celestial Toymaker.